Hey everyone, this is Steve Krause. I'm coming at you on a Wednesday after a snowy day, the kind of day that makes me glad it's an online class. We're heading now into more directly some of the XHTML CSS exercises, and I have some stuff underneath here about things I want you to keep in mind about how to set up your 444 portfolio. But what I wanted to talk about briefly in this video is some strategies for engaging in the XHTML and CSS exercises, which can be kind of frustrating, especially if you've never done this sort of thing before. Let me just remind everybody why we're doing this. I'm not trying to, at this stage of where the web is at, I'm not really trying to convince everybody that they need to become great experts at doing web coding. And that's for all kinds of different reasons that I'm not going to go into. But having said that, some basic knowledge of the fundamental building blocks of the web, and that's XHTML and CSS, I think is really critical. So that's why we're going through these basic exercises. There's a lot more to know beyond this, and there's a lot of stuff that we're not going to talk about, but this will hopefully give you some idea and some way of thinking about how the way that different the code constricts different sorts of ways that you can write about different things. The other thing I'll mention is that we're not talking about XHTML, we're not talking about HTML5, which is the newest version of HTML, mainly because there was no decent textbook or other resource out on the market when I started setting up this class. So anyways, first tip number one is that you have to do the reading. There's an internet phrase for this that I think I'll probably have scrolling up on the screen at this point. But the bottom line is that the only way to actually succeed at completing the exercises is to read things in Castro's book. And also, you'll notice there's links to other XHTML, HTML, CSS tutorials. You got to do the reading. If you don't do the reading for these things, it's just not going to work. So in other words, you have to follow the instructions. Second thing is, you have to follow the instructions. You have to follow the reading exactly. Okay, and this is really important to kind of like keep in mind because people in English departments, English major types, even technical writing types, aren't necessarily used to the idea of following instructions exactly. This is what I mean. When we read a book by, when we read The Great Gatsby or something like that, you can have your interpretation, you can have your interpretation, and so forth. And, English major types will say, oh, well, those are all valid. That's all fair. Things like that. In XHTML and CSS, there is one way to do it, period. There's not a whole variety of different things. So if you do something like you miss a comma or you miss a slash or you miss one of those closed signs, that sort of thing, that in and of itself can screw up the whole thing. So you have to follow. So when you look at these instructions and you look at these things, you have to follow them exactly the way that they're spelled out. The third thing is that if it doesn't work, if you try to do one of the exercises and somehow come up short, there's a very, very good chance that you did something wrong. Now, I'm not saying that to be mean or anything like that. I'm just saying that these exercises will work. Castro's book will work. There's no errors there. It's probably something that you did or didn't do. So the first thing you want to do is backtrack on your work. Okay? It's my dog barking downstairs, by the way. Great. The second thing you want to do is if you email me saying I got stuck on such and such an exercise, realize that I probably will not answer that email for at least 12 hours, maybe longer. And I'll tell you why. Having taught this class for several years now, the typical experience is that someone will email me and say, Steve, I'm totally stuck on exercise 3. I've tried everything. I don't know what to do. And then 8 hours later, and literally this will sometimes happen when somebody will send me an email at like midnight, and then at 8 o'clock in the morning I'll get a different email. And 8 hours later, the email says, oh, never mind, I figured it out. So what I'm saying is that give it a chance to try to figure it out first, because there's a pretty good chance that you'll be able to. And as a side note, I think that this is actually a very useful thing to contemplate in terms of the learning process, because one of the things that I don't think we emphasize enough in schooling nowadays, both at secondary school level and in higher education, is the value of frustration. And what I mean is that when we're frustrated, that's when we push through and learn something new. And you see this in babies, for example. I mean, babies they learn how to walk and they learn how to turn over or crawl or whatever because they get really frustrated by like, oh, I can't do it, and then they, they press through, and that's when they step up to the next level. It's the same basic concept here. You have to get kind of frustrated first with how the coding is working and all that kind of stuff before you press through to the next level. Okay, so a little frustration is good. Take your and again realize that I'm not going to answer your questions right away. You're going to have to wait a little bit. The next piece of advice might seem a little bit odd, and that is that you need to find a happy place. For that, let me cut in a piece of video that I recorded a couple years ago that I still think actually fits in. Watch this. You have to come at this from a peaceful space. I tell my students in my face-to-face classes that they all have to have a happy place. So for me, my happy place might be, I don't know, Hawaii, with beautiful views of Waikiki Beach, beautiful vistas, mountain scenes, rainforests, rainbows. Oh, it's gorgeous. It makes me calm just thinking about it right now. You have to have something like that for you. Whatever it is that's going to calm you down and relax you and things like that. Because what happens if you don't do that is you start, what's going on? What's going on the computer? What's going on? That doesn't do any good. Right? So you got to have a happy place, you got to have a calm place, and you got to be able to make this work for you. So everybody see what I'm getting at? Just calm down, relax. Getting frustrated with this stuff isn't going to do you any good. Okay. One last thought about all this. I'm always happy to meet with people face to face to sit down and go through some of these challenges if you really run into that kind of trouble. We can set up a schedule. I find that when people have their laptops right there, oftentimes we can just sort out that problem just really quick. I also will probably set up a completely optional but encourage for people who get stuck with this kind of thing, face-to-face gathering, probably at the corner, because the corner brewery is just a really easy space for a group of people to work. And last but not least, everyone needs to complete these exercises to go forward in the class. That's just a kind of a given. If you don't complete them satisfactorily, then I guarantee you that you and I will have some kind of conversation so we can sort out some of those last steps. Okay, you'll get through this, I promise. And once you get through to the other side, you'll be really a lot happier having gone through this process of learning a little bit about the coding when we press on to these other exercises. Okay, I think that's it for now. See you online.